I'm going to tell you why I think you should pay attention to Korea, why it would be really wise. The one industry that we could bust into is the cultural industry. They started what's called the Korean Wave. This is BTS. This is the band that really has put K-pop on the charts. Look at these guys. This is the future. I need a white woman. You ready? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick out the darkest skinned person in the class.
The first moment when Sam said pick out the person with the darkest skin, and there was like this
took over the room.
What was that?
There was an Yeah, what was that? Somebody put words to that.
We pretend not to notice, and he's telling us to notice it, call it out, while it's like something we think internally or something we'll talk to a friend.
Each side will ask different questions of each side, and then the other side is going to respond.
Okay, what's a belief that you have or something that you've heard about the US or about Korea?
I hear it's not typical for like men and women to be like close friends, like without like any aspect of like dating or anything like that, like just being friends.
So can someone answer about that friendship?
I have a friend, walk around with him. You guys. So they always think men and women, you have some emotion each other, don't you?
In Korea, it's not common to touch hands like this, something like that.
For Americans, we really appreciate like open communication. For these two, like their personalities just mixed very well, and especially like on a friendship level.
I think that's where the main difference is boundaries. Like that boundary has been set from the beginning, that it's just a friendship and nothing more.
I think this is because the religious effect, the Korean traditional.
Can someone say what?
보수적이다.
There's a Confucius tradition that there must be clear boundary between men and women.
There's a lot of introvert people in Korea, so we're more be careful to relationships.
Interesting. I like how you traced that. So what are some feelings that come to mind when you think of your education?
I feel like it's competitive.
Hard job, I think, maybe.
Hard.
I'm so nervous. Someone is chasing me.
What are the things people are arguing about in education here and there in the US?
The private education and the public education, like the hagwon culture.
Penn State students, do you understand when they talk about hagwons in private academies, do you know what they're talking about?
Cram school, you're familiar with that.
In order to get into the medical school, which is like super competitive, people pour money into that. But someone who doesn't have those financial resources can have those cram school education. So it makes the big difference in the university acceptance.
평소에 여기 펜스테이트 교수님께서 올리시는 유튜브를 몇 번 봤었어요. 이게 딱 저희 학교에 온다고 해가지고 신청하게 됐어요. 사실 저는 맨 처음에 오늘 교육에 대해서 방송한다고 하셨을 때 이제 제가 할 말이 많을까 이렇게 생각을 했는데 막상 수업을 하니까 할 말이 너무 많고
It's most definitely the talking, conversation that we get to know each other's culture and viewpoints, which is not really happening in the Korean university's ordinary classes. I think this kind of communication and getting to know each other definitely helps people to understand each other
Yesterday's activities, we hang out with cafe in local cafe, and they wanted to go like cosmetic shop.
So last year, one of our favorite globalists was Professor 샘리처드, a professor of sociology from Penn State University. He shared his experience as one of the world's best-known supporters and ambassador of Korean culture. Well, we are thrilled to have him back, and Professor Laurie Mulvey, both of Penn State. It is the first time in the Globalist 1.5-year history that we've actually had one of our globalists return. So it is very exciting for us. Welcome back to the Globalists.
We're both honored to be here.
Absolutely.
We are thrilled that you are both here. Just remind our viewers how you started becoming this Korea's ambassador of Korean culture.
Well, you know, I first learned of Korea 40 years ago from when I had a fellow graduate student who was from Korea studying with me. And I became fascinated just immediately by, you know, what was happening here. And then in the subsequent maybe 25 or 30 years, I was really studying the entire world and people and cultures around the world. But I always kept an eye on Korea. And I always was kind of tracking what was happening here. And then about 10 years ago, I started talking about social life and economic and political life here in Korea in my class. But it was 6 years ago, I think, in a video that I did on BTS that took off. And then Koreans started sort of drawing it out of me and what it is that I have been seeing. So.
And Laurie, did Sam get you involved in his whole Korean adventure?
Absolutely. I think he is the one who visited Korea first. And once he came, I knew that I had to also return with him. It sounded too interesting and fascinating to let it go without me.
And so much of our work is together. Yes. So, you know, I get so much thinking from Laurie and I pass it back at her. So it's really nice for us to come to a place like Korea or study or learn about Korea together because it's two minds.
Well, this partnership has been in Korea now very frequently. I mean, you're frequent visitors now to Korea. So tell us what has happened since the last time we sat here. I mean, one of our producers wrote that Laurie makes kimchi now. And I'm thinking, really?
Well, I supervised the making of kimchi. We had an experience a couple months ago with we invited students to come to our house and make kimchi with us.
Oh.
So Sam had a fast kimchi recipe, and we had students from Korea who remembered all the things their moms and grandmas did.
Yeah, had never made kimchi themselves, but they remembered.
They've eaten
it, and they knew things. They were very key things.
So they could tell which was the authentic way taste and which was not.
Exactly, and so we together as a group we made kimchi. So
yeah, that was fascinating, really, to see how the memories for them came back.
Yeah,
but that must have scared the neighborhood. I mean, the amount of garlic you need to make the proper kimchi. Thinks, well, you know, the nuclear weapons not in North Korea is right in the neighborhood.
Well, I am a kimchi global ambassador.
Oh,
so
oh no, really?
It really sort of pulled me in. Yeah.
The kimchi global ambassador.
I am indeed, and we love kimchi.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
here
So
in Korea.
I see why you were making kimchi at home. But you know, besides kimchi, you also here right now with a program with Konkuk University. What is that program about?
What we call at Penn State a May-mester program. So at the end of the semester, there are several weeks where students travel to different places around the world. And instead of a full semester abroad, it's a 2-week immersion. And our colleague, Professor Ben Park, was really the inspiration for saying, let's do it. We probably would not have done it without him. And so last year was our first engagement, which was the most successful study abroad that we've ever done. And we've done them in other places in the world.
And it follows with our work of just bringing students from different cultures together to engage with one another. And knowing that if people do that and so they form friendships, a lot of magic can happen. So.
Well, you learn a lot of things, which is what education is. It's magic, and so that's what we seek.
Well, tell us some examples of the magic that has happened, maybe last year. How is it successful?
Well, even just watching some students, I'm just thinking of a moment where one of the Penn State students started to speak in Korean and was testing out her little bits of Korean in the classroom. And to watch her do that and to see the Konkuk students respond like, whoa, we didn't realize this was possible. And then you build something in that, right? So the one student not only is learning Korean and explore and practicing, but students on the other side are seeing, oh, people are willing to take a step. Wait, I can take a step too. So there's a lot of trust building that goes along with this kind of educational experience. So,
and a couple of the Konkuk students traveled to the United States this past year, and they called up our students and they met together and they spent a day together, and so these kinds of lifelong friendships can happen.
That's so nice, sort of build a future relationship for a next generation. Now, I mean, we know you've already been a fan, but through these intensive activities that you have been doing for the past year, did you learn more about Korea, or are there things that maybe affected your perception of Korea or Koreans in the past year?
I would say one thing that's interesting is the culture here gives us a mirror of the culture of the United States. And we always wind up talking with students about the multiculturalism and then being in a diverse culture and a less diverse culture. And I think it's so fascinating to me because I think we are, in the US, we're in a conversation, and lots of the world is, about multiculturalism and sort of changing the face of what our lives look like, as if that's the best way to be, right? And when we come here and we see a different kind of culture, which is more homogenous, there's another best way to be here. And those two things together, I wish every person in the world could come and sit and look at the difference between the two and realize that there's beauty and there's value and wisdom in both ways.
So many things here are possible because of the homogeneity in Korean culture. And there's so much richness that emerges, and for me, I just feel differently. We've traveled all over the world and been to many different cultures, as you have, and each one has something, but there's something about this homogeneous culture that feels absolutely fascinating.
And not to say that there's full agreement or everybody does the same thing, not at all.
Not at
right?
all.
But yet, you're dealing with different issues here than we deal with in the United States because of some fundamental value agreements that we don't have in the United States.
Well, in Korea, and I think it's a common trait that everyone is most critical of their own. So in Korea, we feel like this homogeneity that you're talking about is actually very limiting, and it sort of blinds us to things that are possible in a diverse cultural country like the United States.
Dude, this is the day. Simon's about three.
And what are you doing later today?
So in Korea, there's a day called Teacher's Day. It's like we don't actually have a Mother's Day. It's a Parents' Day, because fathers were getting so left out so we put them together, and it's Parents' Day in Korea. So we have Parents' Day, we have Children's Day, and then we have Teacher's Day. And it's a day to sort of honor our teachers, whether they are school teachers or, teachers of life. Now, you both are teachers, professors, and you've taught Koreans in the US, and you've taught American students and non-American students about Korea. So how do you think, what are your perspectives of a relationship between a teacher and a student?
My first thought is that you're not a teacher unless someone has learned something from you. And you are a teacher if someone has learned something from you. So that means we're all teachers and then we're all students. And I really think that that's the core way that I relate to the official students in my life. But many of them teach me, and sometimes I teach them. And so I don't think it's a one-way street, and I think it's most healthy if it's not a one-way street.
So for me, I think how awesome it is to have a Teacher's Day, and as well as Parents' Day, because teachers are like parents. As we say, loco parentis, we're in charge of raising young people. And so here, you asked about Korean students, and there's something subtle about Korea. If you ask me to say explicitly what it is that I receive or experience from my Korean students, I wouldn't be able to put any words to it. But I feel it, and it's so fascinating that I feel it from these young people who have lived in this country that has a day once a year that honors teachers, which we do not have in the United States in that same way. And that not only honors teachers, but a society and a culture that honors teachers and holds teachers up. And so I feel that from my Korean students.
It's sort of reflective of how, in a way, we put teachers up on a pedestal in a way. Although in Korea, it's been more of a top-down kind of relationship than we learn from each other kind of relationship. So it's a little different. But do you feel that with your Korean students? Is that sort of what you feel?
In the top-down education, I can't do that. So I can say that I was teaching in a more traditional way in the beginning of my career, which was standing in front of a room of students and saying things. And there was a really significant moment for me when I said to myself, this is crazy. I'm also in the social sciences, right? I'm teaching something different. And I realized everyone that I'm looking at has experiences. They have an expertise of their own family or life or culture. Why am I up here saying things? And so for me, in this work, I think we have to be partners, because what I find, and this is the reason that I've stayed in this work, is amazing brilliance among the humans. No matter who you are, you have something brilliant in you, and I see it all the time. And so I'm always trying to call that out. Like, I don't need to show you my brilliance. I want to help you see your own. So to me, that is the work of a teacher.
So Laurie taught me to do this, right? So, the videos that people are watching, they're not watching it because of me. They're watching it because the footage of me inviting people down to the front of the room and asking them questions. And people respond to me. I get many emails and talk to folks, and they're curious about what young people are thinking. And so I'm asking the questions. And so Laurie taught me, hey, listen, your students, they have a lot to say, and they're very smart. And anything you ask them, they'll say something that's worth listening to if you ask the right questions. I mean, not every time, but eventually they're going to get there. And so the irony is that the older I get, the less I speak in the classroom. It's me just sort of pulling it out of young people. And it's quite fascinating. The reason I keep doing it is because I keep coming up with questions that I want to ask people in my class. And that's how the classes get developed.
And so the students or the viewers of your talk are learning from what the students are saying or what they're doing. I'm sure they are, listening from what you say as well.
Once in a while, I interject something that's reasonably insightful, but I don't have to do it very often because I can just rely on the students and ask the right questions, So that it's funny, right? That I get to a space in life, and we're all here. We've acquired a little bit of wisdom, and we probably have something to say about the world. And it's the exact moment that, you give it up and say, okay, I'm going to actually now move away and let other people talk.
So if I asked you what were the greatest and the not greatest thing about becoming a teacher, would that be being able to step back and see your students learn?
I would say watching people come to life. And now I just finished my 40th year of teaching.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I started when I was 24. The first class I taught was called Cybernetics and Human Ecology.
What?
Cyber,
Exactly.
that's what I said when they asked me to teach
what?
it. Cybernetics and Human Ecology. And I didn't even know what it is. I walked into the classroom and I said, does anybody know what cybernetics is? And that sort of illustrates in a way how I've approached teaching for 40 years. And I think that watching people come to life in the way that I did at some point. And now I've had enough time that I've been able to track their lives over a period to know what's possible. And so with so many people, it's something that I did or something that I said, or accidentally, you know, and it changed their life in some way. And what that brings to me, the joy, you know, we don't have children, so it has such value. I would say that's the greatest piece about being a teacher.
Laurie, what about you? I mean, what are some days where you come home and say, God, I'm in the right position, and some days you're coming home thinking, I should have become an architect?
I think it's kind of convoluted, but when I realize that, so it's similar to Sam, but when I'm with a student one-on-one, which is a lot of time, even when we're in a group, there's a lot of one-on-one moments, and I realize that I can give them some guardrails for their own exploration. Those guardrails come from a lifetime of making mistakes, failing, struggling of my own. But when I'm in that moment and I can say, wait, no, don't undermine yourself, just say more. I know where that comes from in me. I know that was hard won in myself. And so when I can give in that moment, it makes my own struggles, like they were for a reason. And it sort of allows me to keep going and keep struggling in life because there will be a reason.
So you're making that link with another person.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And knowing that, I can't do it for them, and there's no way, I could never say anything to another human that would take the struggle away, but I can be confident, and these are the good days, when I can be confident that, like, this guardrail, it'll help you. I don't know how, but I trust that it will. The bad days are when you realize that there's so much more to do in the world, and you can never have enough time. You just wish the world were different.
Yeah.
Those are the harder days.
Yeah. Well, Korea values its education highly, as you both know. But it's a love and hate relationship. I mean, education is what got Korea from out of the ashes of the Korean War and here. But at the same time, other people criticize us, but I think we criticize ourselves the most harshly about the fact that we overemphasize education, that we put too much pressure on our kids, and education becomes everything and sort of really engulfs young people and makes them unhappy in many ways. What do you think about, you've obviously seen both sides of Korean education. From your perspectives, how do you see it?
I think what your question makes me think is not even specific to education. I think it applies to a lot of things in life that when we hit the same note, eventually that can become toxic. And so I think that if the culture is saying, we're not sure about this anymore, that it probably means we need to do some things differently, right? So I think that it's like the culture has diagnosed itself already, but there's a system in place that is difficult to change, right? Because there's all kinds of stakes when things need to change. And I think from an outside perspective that's the struggle that you all are in with education.
And when you put so much emphasis on test scores, as happens here in Korea, and test scores really are everything, then it means that you necessarily have to emphasize rote memorization and de-emphasize creative thinking. And I think that Korea is in a place right now where creative thinking is going to be what's going to pull the nation forward and solve some of the big intractable problems that are facing Korea. And in fact, emphasis on high test scores is actually going to continue to dig a hole that's going to be increasingly difficult to get out of. Now, mind you, teaching creative thinking is not a very easy thing to do.
No, I don't even know if that's possible.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult.
This is one of those things. I think that people are creative.
Yeah, and we see that here with our students. We have 30 students from Konkuk University and 20 students from Penn State University, and we bring them together now, right? What we saw last year is in the very beginning, the Korean students who were not used to speaking out and saying exactly what they thought, took a couple days for them to really get comfortable in that space. But as soon as they realized, hey, we are serious, we want to hear from you and what you actually think, then they started to talk.
and they said some incredibly
Brilliant.
creative things.
Oh.
And I would ask them, do you say this in your other classes? They say, no, I don't. Nobody ever asks me. And I think, oh my gosh, here's this brilliance right beneath the surface, and it's not coming out.
And I'm assuming young people in Korea they're doing this already, and things are emerging, and it's not what it was. And now that they're connecting across the world, you probably are going to see all of this emerging in a way that maybe doesn't have to be engineered as much as we think.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head in some ways, because people, when I say this, people tell me, but you have so many young, creative people coming out of Korea every single day, in hordes. What do you mean your education is just a rat race? And I think, well, I guess it's such a rat race that if you're able to break out of this rat race, you are, completely on top.
Yeah.
Wherever you are. It's like if you make it in New York, you make it anywhere type of thing. So, last question. People keep asking me, and I'm sure they keep asking you as well, why is Korea so popular? I mean, what is it about Korean culture? Why do people love Korean culture? What is it about Korea that... Is it just because it's new? We didn't know it before? What would your answers be?
Well, I would turn back to the homogeneity. And Korea is a small country of 51 million people, and so many people. There's it's not a singular culture, but understand from the outside, it's a very homogenous culture, and so we get to see that. The rest of the world gets to peer into Korea, and of course, Korea with technology and just the sheer brilliance of being able to portray and show the world what is happening here. We get to see that. And we get to see a culture that is a very fascinating space for human beings to interact. A culture that goes back centuries, right? That's rooted in very old cultural ways. And so I think that makes it really fascinating for the rest of the world. And this is that sense of, as multiculturalism comes to Korea, then it's going to change it up a little bit. But people like us, we don't go to Itaewon. We come to Korea to be around Koreans. We don't come to Korea to be around, the international community. And I think is true for so many people who are fascinated in Korea.
Well, we shall see where the next year, where it takes Korea. And I'll be interested to see your insights then as well. Yes, come visit us again.
Awesome. Thank you, GA.
Thanks for having us.
Now, you may think this is the end of our show, but we have a surprise for the next week's Globalists. In our studio today, we have 20 Penn State students that have come to Korea for this unique adventure with Professor Sam and Laurie. We will carry on this conversation about what makes Korea so unique in the global arena with Professor Sam, Laurie, and their students on next week's Globalists.
Are you just...
I'm a KU student, so I can't...
You're just...
There was like a big group of us. We were comparing our campuses.
I think this...
Oh, in 24 hours? So, this is and the studio is over here.